I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us. Today we're going to look at my best tips for solving these puzzles, and we're going to focus on solving difficult puzzles, but these tips can also be applied to easy puzzles as well, so stick around. The easiest way that I found to solve this when you start out is to try to use numbers to solve. What we mean by that is if you look at each one of these boxes, you'll notice that there are a total of 9 numbers, 1 through 9. So we're going to look at this example. We're going to look at the number 8 right here. Now, if you look at the big board to the left, there are a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 8s, and there's 9 possible boxes. So that means that there are 4 8s remaining, and we would like to be able to solve for those remaining 4. What we do is we say, okay, if you look at this 8 right here, there can't be any 8s in that row or this row, because you can only have one per row and then 1 per box. So what we're going to do is use these numbers to eliminate. What do we mean by that? Well, okay, we can put an X right here because we know there's an 8 above that, and we can put an X right there. So there's no 8s there. We can also go to the right and eliminate that spot, and we can put an X there and an X right there. So there cannot be an 8 right there. Now let's look at another 8 and say, okay, well, we can't put an 8 right here because the 8's over here. And then we can keep doing that. We can't put an 8 there. We can't put an 8 there because the 8 in this box right here. And of course, if you look at the bottom right here, you'll notice there's only one spot left, and we can put the 8 right there. Because we did that, well, that means we cannot put an 8 right here. And of course, we keep going. So there's only one spot right there, and there's where the 8 will go. All right, that's good, because that means now we just keep working. We can't put an 8 here, can't put an 8 here or here, because of this 8 right here. And if we continue on, we can't put an 8 right here because of this 8 right here. And that's going to leave this spot open over here. And now all we have is one more thing to solve. And if you look closely, you'll notice there's an 8 right here, which means we can't put an 8 right there. And of course, that means there's only one spot left, and that's right there. So that is how you go about using numbers to solve. And I have found, at least from my experience, that's the easiest way for me to whittle down a puzzle from the beginning, to just look for numbers where there's a lot of obvious spots. Sometimes it can be a little more tricky, but that's the easiest way to do it starting out. In this spot right here, we are going to learn how to use lines to find missing numbers. More specifically, we are looking at the very bottom row right there, and we're trying to solve the rest of the numbers in that row. I'm going to highlight that right there. And if you'll notice, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which means that there is a 7, 8, and 9 that are all missing. So we got to figure out how to solve for that. And our strategy here is to try to cross-reference and eliminate numbers to solve. What exactly does that mean? Well, let's look at this right here. There's a highlighted in green. And what we try to do is say, okay, what numbers are there in green that we can eliminate? You can see there's an 8 there. Now let's look at the blue one. We couldn't quite solve in the green one there because it's just the 8. Now let's look at the blue one. And if you'll notice, there's a couple numbers there. And then, of course, we'll also take a look at the one that's highlighted in purple right there and try to figure out what we can eliminate and see if we can't solve all these numbers here. So the first most obvious choice, if you look at, we have the 7, 8, 9. And what we want to do is figure out, okay, how do we solve for that? Now, one other note before we go into this is that you could also use this for vertical numbers, meaning this right here, this row right here. You could also use that same technique for that, and you just would cross-reference sideways and say, okay, what numbers can we put in? All right, let's go back to the 7, 8, 9 thing, and we're focusing specifically on this blue row right here, because that appears to be our best option here. And if you'll notice, there's a 7, and of course there is a 9 right there. So what does that mean? That means that we can eliminate the 7 right there, and we can eliminate the 9 from being in the spot that we've highlighted in blue, which leaves us only with the 8. So we just put the 8 right there. Okay. Now that we've taken care of the 8, we can solve for the rest of this, because we know there was an 8 and a 9 in both the other ones. So, okay, this purple one right here, we notice there is a 9 right there. What that means is 9 cannot be in purple. Since we only got 2 choices, the 7 and the 9, that means the 7 can go right where the purple one is, and that means we only have the 9 left, which means the 9 can go right over there. So we're going to put the 7 where the purple is, right there. And of course the 9 in that green spot highlighted right there. And we've essentially solved for that. And again, you can also use this for vertical numbers. Another angle you can attack this from is that the box can also be used. What do we mean by that? We mean like a box like this right here. You can use the other numbers in that box to try to figure out what number can go here. So how exactly does that play out? Well, let's look at this line right here. And we want to solve for the number right there. So we bring up the box right there. And, we would like to figure out what number goes there. So there's a couple possibilities here. You see there's a 1, 2, 3, and then 7, 8, 9. There is no 4, 5, or 6. And we got to figure out, what number do we put there? Well, if you look carefully, you'll notice there is a 5 and a 4 in this box right here. It's also in this full line. But you could also use it too. You could use anything in this box. And as long as the number's in this box, it can't be right there. So you could eliminate that. You could use that to eliminate numbers from what you have here. Here we have a 5 and a 4, which leaves the 6. So we put the 6 right there, and of course right there. Now we move over to this one right here. And the question is, what goes there? Well, we just have a 4 and a 5 left. We see a 5 over here. That means the 5 can't be in, which leaves the 4. So we'll put the 4 right there, and of course right there as well. And of course the last number that's left is the 5, which is pretty straightforward. We just put them in both those spots right there, and we solve it. Let's take a look at a couple different ways we can whittle this board down in front of us. And what we're looking at specifically is the 9 numbers in the middle. We're going to zoom in right there on those 9 numbers. And if you'll notice, there is not a 3, there is not a 7, and of course there is not an 8 in those numbers. So those are 3 numbers we're looking at here. And we're looking at 3 different squares. And any of those 3 different squares could have a 3, 7, or 8. The question is, how do we narrow down our chances and, figure out which one should go where? Well, what we're going to do that is we're going to look at some other stuff on the map. So we're going to look at this square first right here, and we're going to figure out which number should go there. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the cross numbers. If you'll notice in the cross numbers, there can only be 9 different numbers. There have to be a different number in each one of those. And of course, the up-down ones for that intersect of that square, there has to be only one of each number there. So the question is there any overlap? And there is a little bit of overlap here. If you want, take a minute, see if you can hit pause and figure out which one's overlapping. Okay, I trust you've had some time to look at it here. The first one that now overlaps here is this 3 right here. 3 is part of our 3, 7, 8. Since we see the 3 right there, we can eliminate the 3 from a candidate. And now that leaves the square with only the 7 and the 8. Well, we can look at both angles here. And if you'll notice, there is an 8 on this one right here. And there is also an 8 right here as well. Which means the 8 is no longer part of a choice we can have. And since we've eliminated both those targets, the only number that can be there is, of course, the 7. So we're going to put the 7 in that spot right there. Okay, now that we've taken care of the 7, we just need to figure out where the 3 and the 8 need to go. And to do that, what we're going to do is look at this next square right here in the middle with a question mark. And the question is, what can go there? We know we have the 3. We know we also have the 8. But which one do we choose? Well, again, what we're going to do here is look at what overlaps that spot with a question mark. And one way we can look is over here. You'll notice there's a 9, 2, 4, 1, 8. We're looking at the overlap on the outside because we've already accounted for the overlap on the inside of the red square, or the red square of 9. And we're also looking at the other spot that overlaps right here. There's a 4, an 8, and a 2 there. So the question is, what can we eliminate from that? And if you'll notice more carefully, you'll notice on one spot there's an 8 right there. 8 is one of the choices. We can't have an 8 in 2 different spots, so we know that the 8 cannot be it. You can also notice there's an 8 right here. So the 8 cannot be there. And what that means is there's only one choice left, and that's the 3. So the 3 is going to go in that center spot right there. And of course, last but not least, that means now that the 8 is the only number left, the 8 has to go up in the corner, the top right corner there. And that is how we go about solving that square of 9. In this spot, we're going to learn how to use numbers and, of course, logic to solve. In this spot right here, we're looking at the number 2. Now, each of these 3x3 boxes has a number 2. Only 3 2s are shown on the left. Can we find more? Well, the first thing we're going to do is look at where the 2s cannot be. So, for example, this 2 in the bottom right-hand corner, we know that we can't have a 2 there, there, or there. And if we go to the left from that 2, we can't have a 2 there, we can't have a 2 there, and we can't have a 2 there. So we can't have any 2s in the purple spots. Well, there's 2 other 2s on there as well. So let's take a look at this 2 right here highlighted in red. And we can do the same thing. We can eliminate the boxes. We'll eliminate those in red. Can't have a 2 there. Can't have a 2 there. And, of course, can't have a 2 in those spots. All right. We're going to do the same thing with this 2 right here. And we'll highlight that in yellow just to show the difference there. Can't have a 2 there. Can't have a 2 there or there. And, of course, going down, can't have a 2 in those spots as well. Now, Now we look for the obvious. And in this case, most of the time you're going to find an obvious move. In this case, there's not such an obvious move, so there's no moves, right? Well, yes and no. If that does not work, we want to try using logic. More specifically, we're looking at this spot right here. And if you'll notice, I'm going to highlight that and zoom in there, that there is only one or two different spots that a 2 can go. There's this spot right here and this spot right here. Now, if you think on another level, you can extrapolate that. Well, if there's a 2 right there, that means on the left, we're talking about this spot right here. The 2 cannot be in this slot right here. I'll highlight that with an X in just a second. So the 2 cannot be in that spot right there. What that means is that the 2 has to be on the very bottom right-hand corner. That's the only spot the 2 can go. So we're going to put the 2 right there. And if you take this a step further, that means you cannot have a 2 up top on the top left box, highlighted with an X. Well, since all the other spots are blocked, that means you can put a 2 right over there. Okay, now that we're making some progress, let's see where else we can put a 2. Well, if you look to the set of boxes to this spot right here on the very far right, you'll notice there's only 2 slots open. Now that we have the black 2 in place, right there, we can eliminate the spot right here. So we eliminate that spot. That means the 2 has to go right there. So we put the 2 right there. And that also eliminates the spot right here. And that leaves us with 3 2s, which we're not going to be able to find at this time, but we'll keep note for later on that the 2s could be in any of these boxes highlighted in blue. And of course, that is going to wrap all the tips we have up for solving puzzles at the hard level. I am signing out. Thank you for watching, and good luck.